Hi everyone, my name is Sherry Serrano and I'd like to paint some tulips with you here today. So what we're going to do is we'll talk about the supplies first before we get started. So I have a palette here that has 5 colors on it. I have white, titanium white, and it's emerald green, but you could use just about any green, and crimson, cadmium yellow, and yellow ochre. Alright, so what we're going to do is, we're going to start off with our large paintbrush, because we have 3 brushes, that's another thing. We have small, medium, and large. And we have a napkin to wipe our brushes on, a cup of water, and a spray bottle, just to mist our paints as we're painting. Okay? And of course we have a canvas, which is a 10 by 20 canvas. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn our canvas on its side. And I'm just going to paint some vertical brush strokes here, just to paint in that background, just to fill it in. So I'm going to take my large brush, go over to the water, give it a good rinse. And then I'm going to go to my palette. I'm going to take 2 large scoops of white and just set it in the center of my palette. Okay, so about 2 tablespoons of white. Now I'm going to go over to the yellow ochre, which is the darker of the 2 yellows. I'm going to mix about 1/4 teaspoon of yellow ochre into that white. You can see that color mixing in there, but I'm going to get it a little darker. So I'm going to go back, get another scoop of yellow ochre, and mix that in. Now you can see there's definitely a nice yellow tint to it. Okay, so with that new color here, I'm going to take it, I'm going to go over to the right hand side of the canvas. I'm going to pull a brush stroke the full length of that canvas. Go back, reload, and do it again. I'm going to cover the entire canvas with this color. You can also paint the edges if you'd like, if you don't plan on framing this canvas when you're done. Just kind of a nice option. Kind of gives you clean edges. Alright, just reloading after every brush stroke. And just blend it into the last brush stroke so you don't have any white canvas showing. Alright, so our last brush stroke on the far left here. There we go. The reason I turned it on its side is just it's easier when you're doing vertical brush strokes than the horizontal. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to add a little texture, and you've probably seen some of the sponge painting and that kind of thing. So I'm going to take my large brush, I'm going to go back over to the yellow ochre, dab the tip of it so you have a nice amount of yellow ochre on that brush, and mix it into your paint. Again, it's just going to be, well, about a shade darker than our last color. And I'm just going to do kind of almost like a sponge pattern, but I'm going to use like a X pattern. Okay? So I'm going to start up here in the left-hand corner. And what you don't want is a solid pattern on here. You just want to leave some little spaces of your last color and just make a nice little soft texture. The paint underneath is still wet, so it's blending as we go down. I'm going to go back, reload that same brush, and keep going. You don't want it to be too much of a contrast. You can see it's kind of a subtle pattern. So if there's too much of a contrast, you can also do like a wash over it, or just add some white and just go back, start again. You don't want it to be too strong of a contrast. You want it rather subtle. We just want some texture back there before we start painting our tulips. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to rinse out my large brush and set it aside. Wipe it on your napkin. I still have plenty of paint on. There we go. Okay, so flipping it back over. And now I'm just going to look at this painting here. Of course, it's just a nice reference. It doesn't have to be exactly like that. But I'm going to look at the placement of the tulips. I'm not actually going to paint all the tulips in here just to make it nice and simple and fun. I'm going to paint the top row. I'm going to let it dip down. So basically I'm just going to leave out that one bottom tulip, just because it doesn't have to be there. So I'm going to use my medium brush. And now to that center color that we have there, which was the background color, I'm going to go right over to my cadmium yellow. It's cadmium yellow medium, but you could probably use any cadmium yellow. I'm going to get a nice scoop of that cadmium yellow medium, mix it in with my center color. And I'm just going to paint where the yellow tulips are. So I'm going to start here, like an inch and a half from the top. Let's just make it nice and simple. We'll do circles. So there's a nice big circle. It's about the size of like a tangerine orange or something. Okay, now I'm going to move over and do another one. And I'm going to dip this one down just a tiny bit. I'm going to come over just a little bit, right about here. Do a circle. And now the last one, it's going to be over right about here, maybe a little lower than the last one. Okay, so 4 nice round circles there, yellow circles. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over, rinse my medium brush and go over to the crimson and get a nice scoop of the red, crimson, and I'm going to plop that in the center of my palette, right into our last color. Mix it in. You can see it's mixed in with that yellow, which is pretty fun, but it's still remaining a nice red color because red is a powerful color. Okay, so I'm going to come up, I'm going to overlap this yellow here. I'm going to leave some of it. You don't want to cover it all up. So I'm going to come above it. When you overlap things, it just creates depth, and that layering is always a good thing. All right, same thing, same color. This time I'm going to come in between, kind of in between the 2 yellows and next to the red, and do the same thing. Just this time I'm going to paint a little bit more of an oval. You don't want those 2 reds to touch, but you want them next to each other. All right, same idea, kind of running low, but I only have a couple more here to do. So if you run low, just add more of the red. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down in between the 2 yellows, right here. It's a nice red circle. That's going to be our tulip. And again, same color next to our last yellow here. Don't have to be perfect. All right, so it looks kind of funny right now, but it'll start to take shape here pretty quick. So I'm going to rinse out my medium brush just a little bit. And let's go back to the yellow. So I'm going to rinse my medium brush out. And this time, oh, still a little bit of red in there. There we go. This time to the yellow flowers, I'm going to add some of the yellow ochre, which is the darker yellow. So I'm going to just take my medium brush, go over to the yellow ochre, and I'm going to add some shapes to our yellow circles, okay? So I'm going to take our medium brush, go over, and just pull down a few little points here at the top. Little triangular shapes. reload that medium brush with yellow ochre. I'm going to go next to this yellow. I'm just going to come up higher and pull it down the side of that tulip. The center. Get more of the yellow ochre. And just kind of round out that bottom. When you think about tulips, think of them like almost like a coffee cup. You know, they're rounded on the bottom, and then they just kind of like little bowls or cups. And then they have pointy tops on them. Okay? So for each petal, there's like a nice little point. We want to make sure that we have those in there. So to the yellow here, I'm going to overlap this red just a tiny bit. It'll pick up some of that red already because it's already there, and it's going to mix in with it, which is absolutely okay. Putting it up and down and around the bottom. And give that a nice little point. And then we're going to give it another point over here, other petal, and then on the far edge here. Okay, and I'll do another little, just kind of follow it through along the bottom, give it that nice little cup-shaped bottom. All right, same idea, load up your medium brush with yellow ochre, and we're going to do that far right tulip. Start at the top, pull it around, and this time just kind of give it some points in the background there, those back petals, and along the edge. And just pull it around the bottom again, make that nice little bottom to your tulip. Let's take that same color and just add a few little textures in the center of your tulip. All right, it's starting to take shape. So I'm going to rinse out my large brush, and I do the same thing to the red tulips. So rinse your large brush. I'm sorry, your medium brush. I'm going to go back over to the red, the crimson, and get a nice scoop of that. And just kind of pull it on the side just like this, so you can load up your medium brush with plenty of red there. And just like we did with the yellow, we're just going to shape those edges a little bit more. So I'm going to take my medium brush, pull it out, the top of that first red tulip, and pull it down into the flower. Same idea. Load up my medium brush, I'm going to pull up this back petal here, and again, pull it down and around the bottom of that tulip. That nice cup shape on the bottom. Okay, same thing. I'm going to pick up my spray bottle and I hold it up about like 1.5 feet above my paints. Acrylic paints are wonderful, but they do tend to dry out after a while, so to get them to work like oils, you just have to mist them from time to time. Okay, so I'm going to take the same color and move over to my next red tulip. I'm going to pull it over. Just kind of fill in that top a bit. And then use the side, I loaded up my medium brush once again. I'm going to just outline that shape a little bit better. Just pull it down, let the brush do all the work. Pull it down and around the bottom, just like the last ones. Same color. Just kind of outline that a little bit better. You can blend it in with what's there. It doesn't have to be too much contrast there. There you go. Okay, so same brush, same color, over to the next tulip. We're going to start up at the top, and same idea, just give it some shape, little points at the top of those petals. And then we're just going to come out here on the side a little bit, and then pull it around the bottom. Take your time. And then what's left, just kind of blend it in. If you have any harsh edges, like or broken up edges, just dip your brush in the water, go back to your crimson. I just see some broken up edges. I like them nice and smooth. So I'm going to take that same color, just with a little bit more water on it, and smooth it out. Just follow that shape of the tulip all the way through. See how it's breaking up there? It just means you need more water. So I add more water, and do the same thing. Just take your brush, start at the top, and pull it through. Okay. Now I'm going to dip my brush in the water, go back to the crimson. That nice alizarin crimson. And I'm going to go over to the last red tulip. And again, just add some more shape to these. So I'm going to start at the top and get that back petal. And then just pull it over to the side just a tiny bit. I'm going to start right on the edge. And just pull it around the bottom. You can see I've turned my brush a few times. It doesn't have to stay in the same position, whatever works best for you. Just make sure that you get some shape. So we have tulips that are tulip shaped, and they're no longer that nice little round ball that we started with. And go right up to your yellow with that last red. Okay, so now I'm going to rinse out my medium brush. And I'm going to pick up my small brush. I'm going to add just a few highlights. So to the red, we already have the red in the center. I'm just going to go over and I have white on the outer edge of that, so I'm actually just going to mix in the white with the red. So it's a light pink. We're not going to use a lot of this color, just a few highlights on the red tulips. So I'm going to use my small brush, mix in so you kind of get a nice, I like that there's yellow mixed in there already. So I'm going to add just a few little highlights to these tulips. Not a lot. Just some little indication of light hitting some of these petals. They are kind of a waxy flower, so highlights are important because they certainly do have them. Okay. And it helps to just give some shape to our flowers. I'm going to give this one a little bit more. And if they jump out too much, you can always soften them just a little bit. So I'm going to rinse my small brush, like this one back here. I can, after rinsing it, I can just use a damp brush and just soften those edges just a tiny bit so it's not too powerful. See where they are? Just kind of have fun with it. Okay. So same thing with the yellow tulips. I'm going to rinse my small brush. I'm going to get a nice generous scoop of white and a little bit of the cadmium yellow medium. So it's kind of a nice sunny color. You want it lighter than our first original color. So I'm just going to take this new color and just add a few highlights again, just to give these petals some shape and texture. I don't really see a lot in that back one, maybe a small one in the bottom, and then one right here. All right, and I'm going to work my way over here to the far right. Okay, so now we have our tulip shapes. Now we just need to add our, the stems and the leaves, okay? So I rinsed out my small brush, and we're gonna continue just with our small brush from now on. So the tulip stems are just straight up. So I'll try to get them as straight as I can. And I'm gonna use the emerald green. So I'll get a scoop of it. You can see as you water it down, just the kind of a bluey green color. You could probably use like a phthalo green, which is blue and green. Again, just that paint must be a little on the sticky side, so I'm just going to spray my canvas or my palette again. So there's the emerald green. You want it nice and watery because otherwise your paint will skip along the top of that canvas. So you want it to be just glide along and just have that paint flowing off the tip of your brush. So if you don't have enough water, it won't work so well for you and you'll work harder than you need to. All right, so I'm gonna add to that color, I know there's some shadows in there, but I'm just gonna add a little bit of white. Okay, a little bit, I think I got it too light to start with. A little more of the emerald green. Trying to think of what's easiest. I don't want everybody to work too hard. Maybe I'll add more white and we'll see where it gets me. A bit more. I think I'll just start up and I'll go back and add shadows. I think that's probably the better way. Because the majority of it's kind of a lighter color. There we go. So add plenty of the titanium white until you get kind of a nice minty green. If you've ever seen tulips, they're very smooth, the stems and the leaves. Okay, so I'm going to take these and I'm going to pull down straight stems from the tulip bulb or flower. Okay, so I'll start off in the far left. And I scoop my hand down to the base of that brush, and sometimes I guide the brush with my pinky finger, whatever works best for you. But you want a nice straight line from that flower. So I'm going to start center of the flower and pull my brush all the way down. Okay, start over here, same thing, center of the flower. I'm actually thinking, just one second, just want to tweak my color just a tiny bit. To that color, I'm going to add a little bit of the crimson. It's a really bright color that we started with. So I add a little crimson. There's a little tiny bit of a purple tone. It's crazy how powerful that crimson is. There we go. I like it. So I'm going to go over that last brush stroke just a little bit. So right here, just so it's not such a bright color. There we go, it's a little softer. So same color, I'm going to take it all the way across, all stems. So this one kind of curves a tiny bit to the right, and the one in front of it goes straight down to the left, which makes it a little more interesting. There Same color, same brush. I'm going to dip it in the water. I'm going to go to the right of that and just pull down some stems. It doesn't have to, get as straight as you can. What I would advise you to do is try just to do a one-shot deal. If your paint is breaking up, just add more water. But if you keep going back, it's going to get thicker and thicker. So try to do it in one shot. So I'm going to do the same thing on this yellow tulip. Bit of a curve. Okay, it looks a little simple, but that's all right. We're making progress. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the emerald green to it. So I use the tip of my small brush, add a tiny bit more of the emerald green. That's also a very powerful color, it seems like. Okay, so now we're going to add some leaves to our tulip stems. I'm going to start at the base here. And the leaves, you kind of start small, so you just gently touch the tip of your brush and then just add a little bit more pressure, which will spread out the base of that leaf. And then come back and add a second. You can see how I made it a little wider. Angle it up a little bit. Oops, see how it's broken up? I'm going to add a little more water. There we go. Sometimes it gets a little tricky, but I think the more you do it, the easier it gets. Just make sure you have plenty of water, that's the trick. So I'm going to go up to the top here, or kind of in the middle, pull down a more slender leaf. Looks like a letter Y. And then I'm going to keep painting in these leaves. You don't want them all the exact same height or the same pattern. You want to mix it up a little. So this one, it's like 1, 2, 3. This one's the highest over here. And now I'll be painting a lower leaf in here. It'd be really boring if they were all the same height. And of course, they're not when you look at them in the wild, or in the garden, I should say. I'm reloading after each leaf. Again, kind of simple, but we're not done yet. So I'm going to dip my brush in the water. This time I want to get a little darker, just to add some shadows, okay? So I'm going to take my small brush, I'm going to get another scoop of the emerald green. And if you've studied paint colors, you know that red and green are complementary colors. So they can potentially we'll hope that make each other darker. So there you go, there's proof right there. So the red and green work together, they're a team, and they can make, depending on the ratio. So we have mostly green, mostly emerald green, and we just add a little crimson, and it gives us a nice darker, richer color. So I don't want it too dark, so I'm going to blend in the sides there. So we have a nice, it's kind of a hunter green, I guess. right in there. Dip my brush in the water. I'm gonna start up at the base, because the base of each flower, because what it is there's a shadow from each of the flowers. So right at the base of this first tulip, we're just gonna pull down a little shadow. You don't need a lot, but you just want a little bit. I'm gonna just add a little shadow to this leaf. Just here and there, just add some shadows. Again, add a little more water as soon as you start to see it break up a bit. Just blend it into what you already have there. You don't want to cover up what you already did, because of course that's important too. I'm going to just add a little stem here and go down the base of these flowers. So start at the very top, pull it down. So you can see I have a little bit of green on the tip of my finger. This is a good time to just share a little tip. So I'm going to rinse out my medium brush. And see where I added that little green just accidentally? You can just use your medium brush. If it's dry underneath, it'll just wash off. Okay, so back to our green. Make sure that my paint's dry on that pinky. And just go right to the base of those tulips. Pull down those shadows. Again, just here's another. Maybe I'll just pull that all the way over. I got another little funny thing that happened. So again, just use your medium brush, blend out those brush strokes. The other thing you can do is just paint over them. So that one became darker, which I like. There we go. Few more. Same color, I haven't changed it, in the same small brush. Just gives it some texture, a little more dimension than just being one color. Okay, I'm just going to add a few more. This looks a little plain in here, and I can see there's more going on. So I'm going to use that same color. Just add a few more petals in here. So let's see. So there's like little grass blades, I guess, probably in amongst here. This was actually from my own garden, just so you know. I'm proud to say that. Oh, we got a little drip here. So I'm going to take that and just blend it in with another blade of grass. Maybe make that one a little wider. There you go. Let's give this a little triangle shape here. Maybe let's get this one up here. I think we're almost done. A couple more, maybe one right in here. We'll do a longer brush stroke right in here. Okay, I think we are done this painting. I wish you well. I hope you have fun with it and enjoy the thought of spring, because it's a nice sunny day here. So Feels like spring. All right, thanks so much for joining in, and stay safe, everyone.